Welcome to this Whole Life Action Hour. I am Ocean Robbins, your host. So happy to be here today. We're going to be in a moment introducing our guest, my dear friend, Kris Carr. We're going to be talking about how you can be a force of nature instead of, as George Bernard Shaw put it, a feverish clod of ailments and grievances complaining the world won't devote itself to making you happy. We're here to look at how you can tap your own innate capacity for regeneration, for full aliveness, for creativity, for acting on behalf of your own best interests and the best interests of the people you love and the values that you hold. Sometimes life knocks us down. Sometimes life gets tough. How do you respond? With resiliency and creativity, or with tenderness or care or compassion or kindness or love, or whatever is the best you can do with what life brings you. We are here today with somebody who is an inspiration to millions of people on this very topics, who has responded to her own diagnosis with an incurable form of cancer with so much love and creativity and heart that it has lifted the world. Somebody who lost her dad and wrote a book about the journey of grief and embrace of what is that has been touching hearts around the world. Kris Carr is such an inspiration when it comes to doing what you can to make the best of whatever life brings. Now, before I introduce her fully, I want to say today this event is a project of Whole Life Club, which is Food Revolution Network's ongoing membership community. Some of the questions I'll be bringing will come from our Whole Life Club members. And what you hear today is not medical advice. We're offering coaching and our own best insights. But of course, as in all things, consult with a qualified healthcare professional if you want feedback on your specific healthcare realities and needs. Now, today I get to introduce Kris Carr. She's a New York Times bestselling author and a 20-year cancer thriver. She's been called a force of nature by O Magazine and was named a new role model by the New York Times. Kris is also a member of Oprah's Super Soul 100, which recognizes the most influential thought leaders of our times. Her work has been featured in Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, Glamour, Good Morning America, and on The Today Show, and Super Soul Sunday, and Oprah Winfrey Network, and on and on and on. She teaches people how to take back their health and live like they mean it. Her work may just change the way you live, the way you love, and the way you eat. And as an irreverent foot soldier in the fight against disease, Kris teaches people to reclaim their health. Her most recent book is a truly profound one. I'm Not a Mourning Person, Mourning, mourning as in grief. Braving loss, grief, and the big messy emotions that happen when life falls apart. Kris, such an honor to have this time with you. Welcome.
Well, it's so good to see you, my dear friend, Ocean, who we've known each other for decades, and I always love spending time with you. It's such a joy.
Thank you. So, given your journey as a cancer thriver and health advocate, can you share a bit about, you've faced a diagnosis that a lot of folks would feel, deflated by, to say the least, and yet somehow you have used it as a galvanizing force towards your life's purpose. How did that happen in you, that you made that choice to come more alive rather than more scared, or maybe as well as more scared?
Well, it happened over time, but I would say the first thing was, when I was diagnosed with a rare and incurable stage 4 cancer over 20 years ago, and I've been living with stage 4 cancer for all that time, there's very little known about my very rare, strange disease. And so you've heard me talk about this many times, Ocean. I got a lot of conflicting advice, much of which was pretty scary. And I realized I had to become my own wellness advocate, my own patient navigator, and basically create what I called, Save My Ass Technologies, my company, incorporated, and my imaginary company, and promote myself to CEO and figure out how to build my own a wellness team, not just with finding the right doctor for my very rare disease, but also building an integrative care plan to help support my overall body and my overall well-being. And so to me, Ocean, that was a really creative endeavor. And I think for me, at the root of everything is creativity. If I can make something creative, then it's probably going to create a lot of inspiration for me. It becomes my why. And originally, I was doing this, but then I realized that a lot of people in my situation, especially back then when I was newly diagnosed in 2007, there's not a lot of information for a young person living with cancer. And I didn't even realize this living with cancer was even a possibility. And so I thought,
Right.
I'm going to change that. I want to put together some information for people. And it started with a little blog, and then I made a film, and then I wrote books because I was so inspired by what I was learning that I wanted to share it. So I think the point is that I took my focus off of fear
Mm.
and I put it onto service and onto creativity and onto education and onto things that felt very exciting to me, and then ultimately helped me feel better. And so, that created more wind under my sails and wings, and it's just grown from there. And whenever we're in a place of feeling very nervous or scared or anxious, I think it's easy to spiral out. It's easy to go to the worst case scenarios, the what ifs. And, I like to say, let's ask a better question instead of asking, why did this happen? Why me? And like going deep into those anxious ruminations, you could go, okay, what can I do now to support my body and my mental health? And for me, it's like, I know that if I can make this a creative project, then then I am actually really going to get through this in a way that not only helps me, but helps other people.
Yes. You chose to adopt a plant-based lifestyle as a part of your journey. And can you tell us why? And kind of in summary, what are some of the benefits of eating a whole foods plant-based diet for cancer prevention or living with cancer as you are?
Well, if it's good for a patient, it's good for everybody. So I like to say that I teach people who are patients how to take back their health and their power, but also people who don't want to become patients, right? And that's the vast majority of us. And, like I said, in the early days, I didn't really know what to do. I didn't come from a family, Ocean, that had, this information baked into our lifestyle. Like I was not raised by John
You were
Robbins.
raised by John Robbins, yeah.
I was not. I was raised by good people, but definitely like
Yeah,
not the John Robbins, not that level of like,
yeah.
wow, you really know what's going on here. And so, but so few of us are. And I often say we don't come to this planet with an owner's manual. Sometimes we get sick and then we got to figure it out, or we can have a warning sign or a wake up call. And then we're like, holy crap, I got to figure out what I'm going to do to feel better. And part of that process was really researching what are the best diets and lifestyle practices for longevity, for recovery, like what's going to contribute to my health as opposed to contributing to my disease. Because before cancer, my favorite restaurant was Burger King. Let's just be honest. It was, I saw kale for the first time and I burst out into tears, Ocean. So I've come a long way, baby. Um,
Yes.
Partly because I since I didn't know what I was doing, I had to start to teach myself and then say, okay, well, how can I make this delicious? And then I realized it's much easier than we think. So to answer your question, I started with macrobiotics, and macrobiotics was great and helped me get off the standard American diet. And then I became a raw foodist for a while, and I was very focused on an alkaline diet. And really what I've come to is very Michael Pollan, like, eat real food, mostly plants, not too much, and I practice a plant-based diet, but there's many people in my community that are just eating more plants. And to go to the benefits of that, this is where the medicine is. If we want to get really granular about it, it's like, if it's made in a garden, that's where you want to put your focus. So the enzymes and the vitamins and the minerals and the phytochemicals and the antioxidants, all of those great things we get from plants. And to go even further, there is, what's at the root of this diet is it's an anti-inflammatory diet. And we know that inflammation is the root of many of our chronic illnesses. So the more we can reduce inflammation, which is not just from our diet, but like we're talking about diet right now, the more we are contributing to our overall well-being. So eating more of a plant-based diet, I think, is a real home run for each and every one of us, whether or not you have cancer or a different chronic disease, or you don't even want to have a chronic disease, right? You just want more energy and vitality and longevity and vibrancy.
Thank you for that. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about a lot of folks make lifestyle changes and they're wondering how long it's going to take to feel better or to see improvement. What's your experience on when there starts to be positive feedback loops for changes that at times can be hard for people?
Well, I can say it gets worse before it gets better. Sorry, everybody. But sometimes it really just depends where we're coming from. So, for me, when I was practicing the standard American diet and I was eating a lot of fake food and processed food and fast food and refined sugars and alcohol and a lot of caffeine and like all the things, when I went to macrobiotics first and then, just a whole foods plant based diet, of course, in the beginning, I went cold turkey. And so I had a lot of detox symptoms. And so I did not feel better at first. I felt worse, but that was my body kind of resetting and flushing and in a little bit of shock too, quite honestly, because I was used to so many other things. But then I'd say a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in, after the headaches passed and all of the other things were starting to clear up, I started to feel better. And I think that that can be true for a lot of people. But again, it also depends with what you're dealing with. But it's not going to happen right away. But for some people, it could be like, oh my gosh, within 3 days, I started to get my energy back. For other people, it would be like, wow, it was week 4 before it really made sense. And boy, did I just want to quit. You and I have both led big wellness programs where, for me, mine is 21 days and the first week people feel better. And then the second week they tend to feel worse. And then the third week they're like, I've never felt better in my life. So it takes time to change habits. But I think every time we make the choice to do this, we may not hear this, but our bodies are saying thank you, even through those detox symptoms. It's your body, for the first time, maybe in a long time, having this opportunity to really reset and get back into a natural rhythm, which is where your body wants to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen sometimes A1C levels will drop within a day of changing
Yeah.
diet. LDL cholesterol levels can start to go down immediately, even meal by meal. But yes, absolutely. In terms of energy level and the whole body getting adjusted, the microbiome changing,
Yeah.
learning how to absorb a new nutrient profile, it can take some time. Absolutely. Now, there's a saying that pain pushes and vision pulls, and a lot of people
Mm.
may be motivated by a scary diagnosis to make big changes. But if, let's suppose those changes are successful, they lose the weight, their cholesterol comes down, even let's suppose they end up cancer free in some cases, there's a tendency where people will slide back into old habits again. I'm curious your take on what it takes to sustain healthy lifestyle long term, even when you're not facing a health crisis.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that's really at the heart of it too. It's how do we become marathon runners, not just sprinters. And especially when we get out of crisis, we think, "Oh, great, I can go back to my old way of living." And maybe there's certain things you can go back to. Like this doesn't have to be an all or nothing approach. But I think that where I like to go is like more often than not, you're making the better choices. So more often than not, I'm making sure I'm eating all my fruits and vegetables. Every day I'm having my healthy smoothie. Like I'm really being mindful about the amount of water I'm consuming. It's like building your own wellness practice that's doable, that isn't about fits or starts or these big swings of like hitting a goal and then ricocheting all the way back down to the bottom. So I really believe in the power of micro habits. And what I teach in my community are what I call the 5 pillars of wellness. And they're about optimizing what you're eating, what you're drinking, what you're thinking, and how you're resting and renewing. And those pillars rest on a foundation of stress management. So, more often than not, how are we doing with those pillars? And if you think about it that way, I think you're keeping yourself in a practice, in a habitual pattern where you are practicing self-care as health-care and you're not making these big radical swings.
Yes, thank you for that. Adversity is an inevitable part of life, right? And you've certainly faced more than your share of it. Um, a lot of us, when we face adversity, I think we get some kind of a litmus test, a bit more of who we are. Like when you squeeze a lemon, you get lemon juice. You find out what's inside. But we also have choices in that process about which part of us we're going to feed, nourish, lean into. Do you have any tips for folks on how to navigate adversity and bring their best?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. So I feel like first and foremost, we set the intention. The intention for me is how can I live more fully? How can I feel more whole? How can I be at peace and contentment? And how can I experience joy and love on a daily basis? Right. And so when I'm very clear about what my intention is, it's much easier to stay in alignment with it. And when we hit those icy patches, we have a really wonderful opportunity to realign with our core intentions because it's like, the rubber meets the road. You're down on your knees. The rug has been pulled out from under you. Life has kicked you in the teeth, and you have an opportunity to respond, as you said. Um, and I remember, when I was diagnosed or when my dad was diagnosed, and I knew that at some point, we didn't have much more time with him. And my intention was to lead with love, right? So only love in the room. Every decision, every choice that I made, I really tried to come from that place. Even the most difficult conversations or experiences is like, if you don't know, let love lead you. And I think it's a really wonderful way to experience and navigate adversity because it breaks us open and it really shows us the strength in our softness. And that sometimes I think when we're going through a tough time, we think we have to gird up. We have to present our strongest facade, and we have to, harden ourselves to put on our armor. And actually, I think that can be more destructive in many ways, and that flow and that peace can come from that softening. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean that we always want to go to those really tender places. But to be able to have real conversations as you and I have many times over the years of like, how are you? What's really going on?
Right.
And to be able to say, oh, I'm having a tender moment right now because this is happening. And like, that's how we create real relationships. I think that that's how we also create real relationship with ourself, because as somebody who has navigated and, living with stage 4 cancer for 20 years, I could say, maybe if I only had one way to answer how have you been able to do that, I would say it's because I've developed a very strong friendship with myself. And I really enjoy my own company. I trust myself to make good decisions because I have developed that connection with myself. And I think that that's really the secret to how I've been able to stay buoyant. Not just alive, but I think to stay happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. Mindset is critical, and all of us fall into negative self-talk sometimes. Do you have
Yes.
any rituals or techniques or pivots for how to move from I can't, why is this happening to me, what's wrong with me, um, kinds of questions, from glum and cynical and negative to whatever is possible in terms of being creative or resilient or positive?
Yeah, I've got a bunch of ideas there. I think what we did is we developed this toolkit, and throughout life, you're going to get all these opportunities to use it, and we just have to remember that we have it. We've gone to the weekend workshops, we've gone to the yoga classes, we've listened to the lectures, we've soaked in all of your summits over the years, and so we have these tools But sometimes when the poop hits the fan, we completely forget that we have them. And so just a few basic ones is, for me specifically, I always like come back to the breath, because when we're anxious, when we're in fight or flight, we're usually telling ourselves a story. We're usually someplace else. We're lathering around the mouth because I'm not in this present moment hanging out with my friend Ocean. I'm someplace else and I'm spiraling out. But if in that moment we can catch ourselves and come back either through breath work or oftentimes through movement, like if think about it like, oh, I got to change the channel because
Yeah.
I'm like a dog with licking a hot spot. I got to come back, throw the ball, change the channel. And breath helps with that. Movement helps with that. Having a conversation with a friend helps with that. I was in a very bad mood maybe 2 hours ago. I was very angry about something, and I went into my bedroom, and I just lied on my bed and I did very deep breathing and just
Mm.
coming back to the moment, and then spending some time sitting outside, and then getting excited because I knew I was going to talk to you. And even this process of connecting with a friend has completely changed the channel, right? Because I was
Yeah.
spiraling out saying stories, and then now I'm
Mhm.
back.
Yes. Thank you for that. Um, that's really quite profound. And you mentioned breath, and I kind of want to anchor that in even a little deeper, because I've been thinking about that. We're all breathing all the time, and
Mm.
the way that we breathe sends messages to our whole body about whether we're safe or we're in peril. And often when we're scared, our breathing gets shallower and tighter, and that creates a negative feedback loop of fear and stuckness in the body. And at least for me, when my mind focuses on my breath, and it could be box breathing, it could be other forms of intentional depth to that breath, it takes me out of the ruts into presence. Do you have a similar experience? And are there any specific breathing systems that you use that are helpful that you could share with people?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so spot on. And it's that easy. Again, it's not simple to remember that we have these tools, and this one's completely free. Um, so I also use box breathing. So, for example, you would do inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts. That's just one round, right? And so we do 1, 2, 3 rounds of that. You can really start to feel your nervous system start to settle. If you're having those spikes of cortisol, we know what that feels like. It's like, oh, your heart's jumping out of your chest. You can start to literally feel those stress hormones fade, and you're going into your parasympathetic nervous system and out of fight, flight, freeze, or WTF, I like to call it. So there's the fourth one. Um, the other thing is elongating your exhale. So you're inhaling and then your exhale is just longer, right? And so all of these things are self soothing mechanisms that, again, completely get you out of your fight, flight, and into your parasympathetic, where you're in rest and digest. And they're super helpful. For me, I was just lying on my bed doing elongated breath and saying, I love you. I got you. It's
Mm,
okay.
yeah.
People get mad sometimes. It's okay to get mad, but you're okay. It's like just like petting your heart and taking deep breaths. I might do that before I go. Ocean, I had my 21-year scan a few months back, and
Mhm.
I always go into the bathroom before I meet my oncologist to sort of prep myself for the results and look at my eyes and do a little mirror work, and then also do my deep breathing. It's okay. Even if it isn't good news, I've got you. I'm here for you. We've been through
Mm,
other things that are difficult. We'll get there. We'll figure it out.
yeah.
So self-soothing is such a big thing, but I think as adults we forget that we need that. And many of us, maybe our parents didn't give us some of the tools that were necessary as children to learn how to self-soothe. So we're playing catch up. But we just
Yeah.
have to remember how important it is that we do self-soothe at every stage and age of life.
I've been noticing that, at least for me, and this may sound morbid at first, but I find it deeply settling, um, when I drop into the reality that we're all going to die, that literally everything I know and love is going to end at some point. There's something about that, and knowing that's okay, like that's how it should be. Then I lose my defiance that life should be different than it is, and I lose some of my attachment to any particular outcome. So then I sit with, like, what am I afraid of? What's the worst thing that could happen? Okay, a nuclear war, and like everyone on Earth and everything on Earth is gone. I'm like, yeah, okay, that could happen. The saddest part of that to me, it would be the lack of continuity, because literally everything on Earth is going to die that is alive now, right? It's just a question of when. So that would happen sooner rather than later. But then our species wouldn't continue. And of course there's grief about that. And at the end of the day, like, there's just this sense of acceptance that, like, when I recognize that life is terminal and that we just have this fleeting moment, however long that moment is, to be alive, I get less attached to, like, making it be exactly what I think it should be. And this kind of acceptance sets in that it is what it is. And, like, there's the old saying that she who will, the fates lead, she who won't, they drag.
Mm.
And when I just accept, like, this life is what it is, I'm going to do the best I can with what I've got. And so much is beyond my control. And I'm willing to really accept that rather than fighting with the universe that it should be different. There's a peace, there's a sort of a settling, like, yeah, maybe I'll die of cancer. Maybe that would be horribly off brand for either of us. But, like, we're here in these mortal bodies. We don't know how long we'll be here. And for you, it's like you're living with that mortality every day in a more conscious way than many of us are. But we're all super mortal. And there's something about, like, letting that be okay that at least for me brings a sense of greater peace. Now, it's easy to say, and then when you're really faced with it, it gets more scary again. But then breathing into, like, as you know, my dad's dealing with some challenges with post-polio syndrome, and I'm living with the reality of his mortality. And he's this brilliant, amazing light in my life and in the world, and he continues to be. And there's challenges. And holding that and being with that, as you've been with your own father's passing, we like learning to, like, accept that this is okay. Like, it's also not okay. Like, a part of us is like, no, I want to change things with everything I can, right? But we also want the serenity to accept the things we can't change.
Yeah.
Because arguing that with creator or whatever that it should be different doesn't make it different. It just makes the journey more painful. So at least for me, there's something in that acceptance that gives me more ability to make a difference with what I can do. Do you have a similar process, or how do you hold those journeys?
Well, first, I always enjoy talking to you, Ocean, because you're such a deep thinker and you have such a strong spirit and strong spiritual center. So it's fun to have these chats. I think you're spot on. The idea that life is a terminal condition is scary for every single one of us, but it's true. And I often say that we can't want the rainbow, but tell the universe to hold the rain. It doesn't
Right.
work like that. We're going to have our ups and downs, our setbacks and comebacks. In my latest book, I call it, we're each going to go through that rupture, that moment when life changes. And we get to figure out how we want to respond and who we want to be through that. And I'd say that for me, being mindful about our mortality and certainly my own mortality has inspired me to make it count, to make the choices that I make count, to make the life that I'm living count for me. What that looks like for me is very unique to me.
Yeah.
Many of us, especially many of us listening right now, I bet have more days behind us than in front of us. And while that is very sobering and can be scary, it is also, I think, a great motivator, because our opportunity here, as I said a moment ago, is to live fully and to spend as much time in our wholeness as possible. So the pieces of ourselves that may have gone missing, the ouchies, the wounds, the boo-boos that still hold us back, to be able to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to tend to you, because if my intention is fully alive living and you're struggling, this piece of me is struggling, that's where I'm going to put my attention because I want to live fully. And so that piece of acceptance is accepting that, yes, there are those parts, accepting that, yes, I do have cancer, accepting that, no, we don't want certain people to die and we don't want things to be the way they are many of the time, a lot of the times. But acceptance isn't giving up. It's not lowering our standards. It's really saying it is what it is. And I'm going to be very mature about that so that I can actually show up fully to the present moment. I also think a piece of acceptance, like for me, has been about having my own back, about saying,
Mm-hmm.
you may have cancer, but cancer doesn't have you. It doesn't define you. And no matter what, I have you. Right. I'm not trying to change you. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm not trying to cure you. There was a time that I thought I couldn't live or certainly, have a conversation like this unless I was perfect on paper.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the healing path, and that is the path that I choose, but there's nothing broken about me. And that's the piece that each and every one of us gets the opportunity to accept.
Yeah. Thank you. So profound. And in that light, I'm thinking that the body's response to unhealthy food, there's nothing broken about that either. That's a totally natural response. If you eat a lot of sugar and processed junk or excessive saturated fat and you have high LDL cholesterol or you have other symptoms that tend to go with some of those dynamics, or you just don't feel good, high inflammation, etc., that's actually a natural, normal human response to injury or to stress. And it's also a feedback signal that can also catalyze us not to blame ourselves, but to get curious about ourselves and how we can feel better and feel more whole, not because there's something wrong with us. And a lot of people also, I think, try to do it all right, and they're still not feeling great. And then they can blame themselves for that and think, okay, because we have this thing in medicine, like the patient failed the treatment. Well, actually, I think the treatment failed the patient in that case, right? but with food and lifestyle, I'm curious if you could speak to the folks who feel like they've made big strides and they made big changes and they're still not feeling the way they want to feel. Is it about fine tuning and finessing? Is it about more self-love? Is it often that there's some piece they're missing in their nutrition or lifestyle that they need to bring in more? What's your experience for those folks?
I think it could be all of those things. If you've made some big changes and you're really still not feeling the way you want to feel, then I think that's a good time to look under the hood and get blood work and work with an integrative physician, because maybe there's something that you're deficient in and we got to look at it. Or maybe, if you do a stool test, we'll see like, oh, wow, I'm really having some trouble with my gut health and I have to do a reset there. I have to go deeper. Right. I'm on the right path, but now I get this opportunity to go deeper because now I'm understanding exactly what's going on. Right. And so we look under the hood to do that. We can't always know that without doing that kind of work, looking at our thyroid, looking at, depending on what age we are, looking at our hormone levels. There are many reasons why we might not feel vibrant. What I also want to say is that, oftentimes we will compare ourselves to other people on social media, and we may see somebody out there who's looks super vibrant and we're like, why can't I feel like this person feels? We know nothing about this person. We know nothing about how they truly feel about their background. Our bodies are so uniquely, unique to us. And so I would say we have to be thoughtful about the expectations we put on our body, because sometimes it can take a whole lot of years before something like cancer manifests in our body. I think
Right.
that I've read anything from like, cancer started 10 years before your diagnosis. Right. So we can't expect that again overnight we're just going to feel like Olympians. And I'm not so sure Olympian feels that great all the time either. You know what I mean? So I'd I'd say, lower the bar. Don't lower your standards, but lower the bar, lower the pressure and the expectations that you put on yourself to say like, hey, do I feel a little bit better than I did yesterday? Do I feel a little bit better than I did 3 months ago?
Hmm.
This is a practice and a process. And at some point, yes, I need to go further. I need some outside counsel. But like really being thoughtful about the rules and the expectations that you put on yourself, because healing is not linear. Healing zigs and zags. It kind of moves like a crab. You've got setbacks and comebacks, and it's oftentimes our expectations that get in the way, not the body's innate healing process.
Yes. Placebo effect is a powerful force, and to the point that in many studies they have to create some way to isolate for that, because when people believe that something is good for them, they tend to have positive outcomes and positive experiences. In science, that's seen as a problem to get past so we can get to the data. But there's also a perspective from which maybe we should be harnessing placebo effect. If our minds are that powerful, do you believe that there's an important role in mindset, not just to like help us make positive choices, but also to actually create positive outcomes?
Oh, without question. Without question. I mean, let's go straight to the body. It's all about inflammation and inflammatory response. All the kale in the world doesn't mean anything if I'm just immersed in stress and panic and fear and anxiety and whatnot. So it's addressing what you're eating and addressing what's eating you. This is the holistic path.
Right.
And so to me, having a vision and saying, like one of the things that I used to tell myself as a newly diagnosed patient was, what one person can do, so can another. And if I saw somebody that I aspired to be more like, oftentimes they were, health heroes, I would not say, well, I can't do that because I don't have this, that, and the other thing. I would say, if she can do it, I can do it. I might not know what to do today, but I'm going to hold that vision that my life can look like that too.
Yes.
And so that visioning process is so powerful. We each need to have those mentors and those people who inspire us to step into our greater selves and step into our greater potential that maybe we've just tasted, but we've never really fully embodied. And also realizing that stress and a lot of negative self-talk and all of the things that come with it, fear, anxiety, really affect us at the physiological level. So that's why when we talk about the simple breath practices, I want you to think about that like it's anybody listening, like it's like your breath is like a vitamin shot. It's like a B12 shot. It's like a booster shot. You know what I mean? It's literally you contributing to your energetic bank account.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that's helpful.
Yes, thank you. Now I want to get to a few questions from our Whole Life Club members. Melanie said, if acts of giving and selflessness are deeply meaningful and fulfilling expressions of love and kindness, how do we balance these with the focus on self-care that we're so often told to prioritize?
Oh, that's a lifelong practice, I think, for each and every one of us, right? It's the great saying we've heard a million times, you have to put on your oxygen mask first. And I think, as somebody who's gone through a very difficult time recently with the loss of my dad 3 years ago, when I was in the heart of the crisis, it was hard to practice self-care because obviously, there's a lot going on. My dad's dying. I'm right nearby. I'm in the process trying to be very helpful to my family. A lot of needs that are happening. And so I'd say in those cases, I really focused on the little micro steps that I could make sure that I put in place for myself, because you can't show up for people when you're depleted. You don't make good decisions when you're depleted. You are not patient when you are depleted. You know what I mean? It's like you have your best intentions to be your full-hearted self, but if you're depleted, those best intentions also go sideways. That said, again, making sure that in every day, in every way, you're taking care of yourself in some way, filling that energy tank. You cannot please everybody and you can't help everybody, and it's not your job to do that. So who are your true blues? Who's in the inside circle? And within that, you're still going to have to make boundaries. And I think that each and every one of us have a hard time disappointing people, but Cheryl Richardson has a great book, The Art of Extreme Self-Care, and one of the chapters is called Let Me Disappoint You. And I read that chapter probably once a year because I'm a people pleaser and I like people to like me. But the older I get and the wiser I get, and the more I understand what I need for my own health, I know that I can't bleed my energy out. And so I had to get comfortable with the discomfort of disappointing others by saying no, or I can't, or I wish I could, but this isn't going to work for me. And well, what's the reason? You don't even have to have a reason. It's just like what my energy needs at this point has to be my number one um, because you are what you have. You know, this is the instrument. We have to keep it in tune. So those are just some ideas, you know, to drive around. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I often use that phrase of an overflowing cup, that it gives most bountifully. We hear the put your own oxygen mask on first before helping others. You know, there's so many metaphors that could apply that, you know, I think that martyrdom is overrated.
Yes.
But at the same time, genuine, like a lot of people find genuine joy in serving others. And that is beautiful.
Yeah.
I think that some of the happiest people in the world are those who have found the joy of contribution. So we need that. That's a human need. But coming from the story that it's selfless is actually kind of self-defeating, I think, versus it is self-full to contribute, because it is our nature to love others and want to be a source of contribution to the world around us.
I love that. Self-full. That is so beautiful. And I think what, you know, you and I are talking about the same thing. It's just about finding that balance, right? We don't make it so black and white that if I have to give all of myself, otherwise I'm not being, you know, selfless or self-full. It's like we have to have a full self to be self-full. Give, serve, be in community. We do not want to be isolated human beings, but don't give your whole self away because there's nothing left for you.
Yes. Christina had a super practical question. She said, I'd like to know more about taking probiotics on a daily or weekly basis. I've bought fermented oat milk drinks that claim to have active cultures, but don't mention how much bacteria is in there. And the label says it's pasteurized. So does it still have live bacteria? And kefir, I can't find kefir that isn't milk-based so far. I don't feel like making my own. How can I come up with a plan for how much and how often to take these drinks that are supposed to promote good diversity of intestinal bacteria? Then there's Greek cheese and Greek yogurt that are supposed to be nutritional powerhouses too. No? So any thoughts for Christina on any of these topics?
Yeah, I'm actually really curious about what you think about all this, Ocean.
Okay.
Can
I
you
can jump in first if you
can
want.
you start with that
Yeah.
one? Yeah.
Okay. So probiotics, first of all. Okay. So probiotics, there's mixed studies out there. There are some studies showing benefit, but there's also a growing body of concern that they're hyperpopulating one species or strain of bacteria that can actually overwhelm. And what we really need is a diversity of gut bacteria. And the best way to nurture that is by eating a diversity of kinds of fiber, because all whole plant foods contain fiber. No animal products contain fiber. There's no fiber in bottled oils or added sugars. And so, but you need a diversity, and diversity of kinds of vegetables in particular and fruits in particular, but also legumes and whole grains. All of these provide rich fiber that feed different bacteria. And there are so many different kinds of critters in your gut that you need. And there's a thriving ecosystem. And when they're all getting the food they need, they tend to find their way into right balance. And then they digest your food. They make your neurotransmitters. They keep your brain happy. They help your body create the hormonal balance it needs. Those bacteria are integral to how you function and how you feel. And so probiotics can be a little bit problematic. If you had to choose prebiotics or probiotics, I'd say focus on the prebiotics, because then the good guys will proliferate in abundance and diversity. But that said, there is research showing that fermented foods can be beneficial. Now, the so-called wild fermented foods like sauerkrauts and kimchis, these don't have just one inoculant put in them that proliferates. They have a whole bunch of different kinds of things. So that may be better from a diversity standpoint. But sure, getting some cultured yogurts or kefirs can have benefit too, and the research does back that up. Personally, I know you said you don't like, Christina, you don't want to make your own, but I will say we have a Yogourmet home yogurt maker, super easy. And we put Eden soy, unsweetened soy milk, which has 12 grams of protein per cup, and the only ingredients are water and organic soybeans. Put a quarter of that in with a bit of culture and just let it sit for overnight. And the next day we put it in the fridge and it gels up, and voila, there's some yogurt with, again, 12 grams of protein per cup, and it's delicious and it feels good to my body. So that can be a cool thing to consider. Yes, you can buy stuff. Nothing I don't think you can buy will be as good as that, because that's simple and basic and clean. But there are some good products on the market. Stay away from the sugars. A lot of them have so much added sugar, and the kefirs particularly, so much added sugar that, like, what are you really getting at the end of the day? Really, it's a sugary drink, and masquerading as a health food. So as far as Greek yogurts and Greek cheeses, well, they're high in protein, they're high in calcium, they bring all the things that dairy products bring. They also are high in hormones. They're pro-inflammatory, because that's another thing that dairy products bring. And so, you can make your own, cheeses or nut cheeses, or get them in stores. There's new ones coming out all the time. Miyoko's has really taken the nut cheese world by storm and gotten us a lot of great options out there. I wouldn't call that a nutritional powerhouse. I'd call it a nice way to hit the spot for cheese in a way that's reasonably healthy. Nutritional powerhouses are things like vegetables and legumes. Beans are super powerful. Fruits, nuts and seeds, all of these things can be nutritional powerhouses. But, absolutely, I think that soy milks and soy yogurts can be great. And again, though, focus mainly on feeding the good guys with the good bacterias.
That was so beautiful, Ocean, and so great. I am going to Ocean School. It's spot on. And also what I love about that is it's a holistic approach. You're really focusing on what moves the needle overall in your gut, the prebiotics, probiotics, the fact that you're literally feeding the guys what they need to thrive. I think when we think about all of the products that we see on the market, it's still taking the sort of like quick fix, eat this and you'll get that approach. And that's just not how our bodies work. It's not how our bodies are designed. So I don't eat kefir. I mean, if I'm going to have anything, it's going to be sauerkraut or kimchi or, but I practice the same approach that Ocean suggested. I don't even eat yogurt because I'm not a yogurt fan. And so, but my gut health is quite strong because what are we doing? We're focused on eating all of the plants and the fiber that they need. So I think in some ways you don't have to worry about it as much, especially if you're eating the rainbow and a diverse plant-based diet.
Yes, thank you. Carrie said, how can you balance having enough healthy habits without feeling you have to incorporate every healthy living thing you hear about into your daily life?
That's a great question. That's why I came up with the pillars. It's like, am I drinking enough water? Am I moving my body, more often than not? Am I taking care of my stress levels? Am I eating my fruits and vegetables? Just kind of looking at each of those areas and saying, hey, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, like we have a little wellness tracker that you can fill out where you're just kind of keeping track of it. But not in a way where you have to get it right, be perfect, follow a very rigid plan. Because what I have seen over time is those plans tend to have some sort of whiplash ricochet where, you might be white knuckling it, doing them, trying to check all the boxes on a regular basis, but at some point you pop. And so you don't have to do it all, but are you doing something, right? What are you doing today that's going to inch your health forward? And then over time, can we add a little bit more focusing on those various aspects? That I call them the pillars, but it's really, again, the basis of lifestyle medicine. We know we need to stay hydrated. So, are we drinking our water? Like just starting from the place of, hey, you know what? If I'm thoughtful about where I'm the weakest, it's with my hydration. Okay, for this period of time, I'm just going to focus on my hydration. And guess what's going to happen? My elimination is going to improve. My energy is going to improve. I'm going to have less brain fog. My skin is going to improve, all because I was just drinking water.
Yes, so true. I think one of the pieces I just want to bring in is that we are inundated, all of us, with opinions about what we should eat and how we should live. And especially if we're curious about those topics, we're going to have so many experts telling us so many things, some of which will point in completely different directions. And you can't follow every piece of advice you hear, and you shouldn't. And, so the key thing I think is to find the people you trust, the resources you trust, like Kris, like Food Revolution Network, like whoever it is that has earned your trust, and then listen to the people they trust and keep within that ecosystem. Not because it's inherently right, but because it's what you've chosen. You've got to follow a path. If you're going on a hike, you got to follow a path. Not because there aren't other paths, but because you've chosen a path. And if you keep going off the path, you'll just end up with a bunch of brambles, and lost in the woods. So I think a lot of people follow the natural health path and they're like, oh, there's this expert saying this and this expert saying this, and then they end up eating the standard American diet right back where they started, feeling lost and confused. That's kind of like getting lost in the woods. So my suggestion is choose a path wisely and consciously, choose the guides and the mentors you want to trust, and then stick with that. And don't get lost in trying to do everything perfectly. Just keep doing the best you can and keep putting one foot in front of the other, knowing you're on a journey towards ever increasing self-love and wholeness and healthy habits that support the life you want.
Mm. What he said, I will have one of those.
Will said, in your opinion or experience, what role does a support system play in helping one truly commit to the changes they want to make?
There's a great quote by Swami Satyananda, and he says, I, illness, we, wellness. And so we need each other. We are pack animals. And isolation and loneliness is on the rise. As technology has brought so many great advances to us, more and more of us are feeling like we're very alone. And so one of the things that the research says is that we're 95% more likely to follow through on our goals. So in this case, wellness habits, if we have support. And so I think I could just leave it there. If you feel like you're struggling, get that support. You're in Ocean's community, stick with that community, make your friends, create your accountability buddies, because that is what creates the momentum. There's also another idea about willpower. And I think willpower, there's so many myths about willpower. I think the biggest thing that creates motivation is actually friend power. And friend power, when we lean on that, will get us so much further than us by ourselves trying to white knuckle it through.
Yes, absolutely. Kris, thank you. Your life is a light and an inspiration to so many. Even through the darkness, you bring purpose and meaning, and you touch our hearts. You've been an inspiration to so many people through these last 21 years. And I just want to say thank you for the heart and the love and the inspiration you bring, and the courage to live like you mean it and inspire so many others to step into their purpose with as much care and as much joy as possible. Thank you so much for your wisdom, for your leadership, for your brilliant books. Everyone, please check out Kris's books, available wherever books are sold or on Amazon. Check out her work, her membership community. You are such an inspiration to me and to so many others, and I thank you for your partnership in this vital work.
Thank you, my dear friend Ocean. Thank you.
When it comes to cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, and other chronic illness, what really matters isn't how many books you read, how many webinars you attend, or how much you know. What really matters at the end of the day is what you eat and how you live. The science has given us what we need to know. Now it's time for action. It's time to implement and optimize your healthy lifestyle. It's time to get results. It's time to say goodbye to confusion and hello to clarity. It's time to say goodbye to bad habits and hello to good ones. It's time to fall in love with foods that love you back. It's time to join a community that will support you in achieving your goals. It's time for Whole Life Club.